Welcome to Week 18 of Spotlight on Laurel, her history, and her people. I'd also like to say Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Thanks to our Week 17 Coach Denny sponsors, Shoe and Family Footwear, think of them when you're thinking of those holiday gifts, and Martin Insurance Agency, where they'll be happy to get you the best rates possible for any and all of your insurance needs. Of course, to Noah White, the video guy, as well as our weekly partners, the Sentinel-Echo. This week is a dandy because it seems like everywhere I turn, someone tells me I should interview Mr. RJ Bruner. So, RJ, it's sure nice to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So, I always like to begin at the beginning, of course, but tell us about yourself, starting with your parents, your siblings, where you were born and when you were born, and let's start from that.
Well, I was born in East Bernstadt, Kentucky in 1926. My father was Rufus J. Bruner, Sr. My mother was Golden Elizabeth Castile. Her father was one of the largest landowners at the time in Laurel County.
Yes.
He owned hardware stores, business property and everything in East Bernstadt.
Okay.
And of course, East Bernstadt was at one time, the second biggest town in Laurel County, Pittsburgh being the biggest.
Pittsburgh was the biggest, and then East Bernstadt.
Coal and timber and all of that. East Bernstadt had 3 hotels, Elk Hotel, Rutledge Hotel, and the Hiller Hotel.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And this was during the what?
Well, this was during the 20s and the 30s.
Okay.
And before. I can't remember before.
Right.
On that, but it was a good little town for a long time until they made London county seat.
Right.
And then London began to grow.
Yeah.
And everything began to move to the county seat town, which is proper.
Right. But East Bernstadt, that's amazing. I didn't know that. East Bernstadt was larger than London at that time.
Oh, at one time, yes.
Yes. What about that?
It had 4 grocery stores.
Yeah.
2 wholesale grocery houses, Laurel Grocery, which is still in business.
Right.
And the Watkins Grocery, which was a wholesale grocery house also.
I've heard of both of those. Yeah, I've heard of both of those. Yeah.
And but it was a good town. It had a real good school, and the school is only to the 8th grade now.
Yeah.
But it still be.
It's still considered a very good school.
One of the good schools. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So what were times like back then?
Well, times was good. I thought, we had plenty of room to run and play, and of course we had to work a little in gardens and farms, and I always milked cows of a morning, and as I like to say, slop the hogs.
Yeah.
Keep chickens and things, and you raised what you eat.
Yeah.
And it was just, to me, it was good times.
Right.
And of course, a lot of people look back on it and they say things was hard and rough, and I guess it was for an adult.
The work was hard, but the times were simpler.
Absolutely, yes.
You didn't have enough things. I mean, I won't say enough, but as many things to occupy your mind.
That's right, yeah.
And so you could focus more on the things that were more important.
Yep.
I think so.
But we had a good time. We had a bunch of boys that we played with in the town, and we, as we said, across the railroad track.
Yes.
Which was the Swiss section of East Bernstadt.
Yes, the Swiss. See, I have a lot of Swiss blood in me.
Yes,
from the Blunchies were Swiss immigrants.
Yeah,
that would have been my great grandfather Anton, and
Fred Blunchy.
Fred's my great uncle, I guess, twice removed uncle.
He came over here from the old country.
Yes. The Blunchies were, and they're still, but that's part of the settlement down there. Bernstadt is a Swiss name. Bern, Switzerland. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Stat, settlement. Right. Yeah. It's like Swiss colony on the west side, and it was called Bernstadt at that time. Then they put the east with it. Well,
Bernstadt is settlement here.
Right.
Out 80.
Okay.
And then East Bernstadt was settled over there, and they call it East
and
Bernstadt.
West. Yes.
On the east and west, right.
Right. Yeah.
But they were each one. The group that settled in East Bernstadt were mostly Catholic.
Yes.
And the group that settled at Bernstadt were mostly Dutch Reform.
Okay.
I believe Dutch Reform.
But it's
was
former
the
Protestant. It's former
Yes,
Protestant.
right.
Right.
That separated those two groups.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's how they. Well, I didn't know that. I knew that the Blunchies were Catholic.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then of course she married Kay Williams, who was Protestant Pentecostal, preacher.
Yeah. Right.
Stuff. So that was and she was. But I'd heard that her mother was actually Protestant and her father was Catholic.
Yes.
And so they split the family up. The girls would go to church with mom, and the guys would go.
Yeah.
Now I'd heard that. I don't know. That's down through the years.
Yeah.
But so you have Swiss blood in you then?
No. I've got German.
Okay.
Which is, of course, a lot. There's three kind of what they call German: Low German, German, and High German. And
Okay, you got to expound on that a little
well,
bit. Now,
I don't know exactly the difference in it, but Grandma Mooster.
Yes.
I always called her. She
Yes.
was not my grandmother. She was my first cousin's grandmother.
Yes.
And we all called
Very
her
familiar.
grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
But she said she spoke what she called High German, or Swiss.
Okay.
I never did didn't learn much of it, but
but the low,
yeah.
and then the high, and then the what?
And just German. I don't
Okay, so
know.
but that was a difference in languages then.
Yes,
I guess.
I would kind of say it's kind of like the difference between here in the United States, the South and the North.
Broken dialect.
Different. We say things that people in the North, they say, "What do you mean?" Like
yeah, and we can't understand them either.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
And,
So,
but I went to work for Kid Brothers Grocery Store, which was the largest grocery store in Laurel County at the time. He had Mr. Kidd owned the grocery stores in East Bernstadt, London, Corbin, I believe Williamsburg and Barberville.
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah.
They had had several.
he was a high roller then.
He was,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
And I went to work for him when I was 16, working on Saturdays.
Yes.
And I thought I was bad underpaid. I worked 15 hours a day, and I got $1.50. And I always thought, gee, he was just working me for nothing. And after I got grown and got to looking and thinking back, grown men with families was working on farms for $1 a day in their dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I was working, and I mean, that was from daylight till dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I worked from daylight till dark in the grocery store, and I got $1.50. So
Yeah.
I was paid actually more than a man with a family.
And back then a penny would buy something.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we
making that kind of money. I mean, that you're talking about $1 a day for working on a farm. If you got to work 7 days a week, that's $7 a week.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Yeah. People these days can't possibly wrap their mind around that.
No, you're not really.
Yeah.
Really, you can't.
Yeah.
But I was well paid,
Yeah.
for a 16-year-old boy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then in the next summer, when I turned 17, I got to work part-time for 2 weeks at the depot as a yard clerk. I got to take Wathen Morgan's place. He was a yard clerk at the depot. When he went on
Train
vacation,
depot. Yeah.
I got to go down and take his place. And the next year, I got to work at East Bernstadt 2 weeks and at London 2 weeks at the depot.
Yeah. Well, so the depots tell us where the depots were. At
Well,
that
of
time.
course, the depot in East Bernstadt was right in the center of town.
Okay.
Where School Street comes down, hits Main. Why, if you went right across the street, that was
I know
the depot
exactly
right
where
there.
that crossing is. Okay.
And
Yeah.
the depots here in London was over what we call East London.
Yes, I know where that's at.
The
yeah.
freight
Over
depot
where
was on the
tobacco
left.
warehouse.
The freight depot was on the left of 80, and the passenger depot was on the right side.
And a lot of freight still travels by rail, but back then, that predated the interstate highway system by 30, 40 years
Oh,
at
yeah.
least.
Yes,
So freight couldn't travel any other way
No,
in a quick manner except by rail. So those were large hubs.
Yeah. Well, see, we had there at East Bernstein, we had Law Grocery and Watkins Grocery. They got all of their groceries by freight.
Mm-hmm.
Here in London, you had London Grocery, and then a couple of the bigger grocery stores and things. They got a lot of their freight by the rail.
Right, right.
And I got a real good lesson in life working at the depot down here. I, of course, 17 years old, and I went out one day to open the car up to get the freight out. And at 1,800, never will forget it, 1,875 pounds of freight, which was a whole lot of freight.
Absolutely.
Well, I opened up the car and went in, and all that was in there was a big compressor. That's all it was. And I come back in and I said, I can't unload that thing. The old freight agent said, well, that's your job. And I said, well, it may be my job, but I can't do it. I just can't do that. And he says, that's your job. You have to do it. And I said, well, I'll just quit. I reached over and got my coat and my dinner bucket, and I headed out. And it was about 100 yards from the freight to Highway 30 to where I could turn and come back out. He let me walk all the way out to the highway, or out to the road and start uptown. Then he squalled at me, come back here a minute. I walked back there. He said, go over and sit down a minute. I went over and sat down. About 30 minutes, a truck rolled in, and two old men got out. They were probably 35. And
they were old men to you.
Yeah,
though.
two old men to me, yeah. And they got out. One of them was carrying two little 9-inch pipes, and one of them was carrying a crowbar. And they walked in that car, and they just prized that piece of machinery up, stuck one of them pipes under it. 5 minutes they had it rolled right out into that truck, just as pretty as you please. And he looked at me then, he said, now you've learned something. I said, you're exactly right. I got a good lesson.
You got a good, he was testing you there.
Don't jump to conclusions about stuff.
Yeah. So.
And I worked from my sophomore year, junior year, and senior year for the depots on the summertime.
And so you did graduate though from high school?
East Bernstead,
East Bernstead High School.
Yeah, and then I went into service, and I spent 2 years in service. I had 2 years. We had what they call a home guard. They had called the National Guard out because the war was going on. The war started. The National Guard got called out, and they formed what they called a home guard. And my father was a captain in it, and he took all of us young fellas, 14, 15, 16 years old. He said, you boys are going to have to go in. Said, you might as well learn to be soldiers. And so we'd all get down there.
Is that right?
One night a week and drill and learn how to. And we'd have blackouts, and then we'd have to walk the streets of London here to check out, make sure everybody had their lights off, afraid of war and stuff. So,
yeah.
We had old shotguns.
Yeah.
And we guarded at the Derby. We got to go down to Derby and guard there and everything. It's a good life. And
so now out of high school, you said you joined the service. Did every young man join the service, or there was I know it was wartime, so obviously there was a draft.
Oh yeah.
But you joined up.
Yes.
I
volunteered.
Volunteered.
Yeah.
But say the young men who didn't volunteer, they were very susceptible to getting drafted in.
Oh yes.
Anyway.
About all of my friends either volunteered or were drafted.
Or were drafted.
One of the two.
Okay.
I don't think there was one of them that wasn't. Most of them volunteered.
That's something that young men just took for granted. They knew they were going to be defending their country.
That's right.
Even when they were getting their high school education. Times have changed a great deal. I think that discipline really helped your generation. They call your generation the greatest generation.
Well, that's what they keep talking to us that way. Yeah.
I don't disagree with that. Based on the folks that we talked off camera about my grandfather and things like that. But that to me, that was my grandparents' generation on both sides of my family. Were just something special about that particular group that you grew up in?
Well, it's you know, the people that were in World War One, we all looked up to them. You know,
you appreciated what they did.
What they did, and then World War II come along again. The same thing. We got looked up to when we come home and all that. But then the Vietnam War come along, and I don't know what happened in it, but for some reason, the people turned again that war completely. And the boys who came home from Vietnam, they got spit on, they got mistreated. To me, every one of them were heroes.
Absolutely.
For the simple reason that they had to take all of that from their own people.
Nothing changed, in my opinion, except society itself.
That's right, yeah.
You know, and I was going to say, wouldn't it be absolutely great and awesome if we could go back to the time when they were looked up to?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Anyone who defends you and your freedom,
yeah,
they're looked up to.
Absolutely, I think so.
And it's become way too normal now.
Yeah.
We've come to accept, you know, just non-discipline and non-respect toward military. That nothing, I'm not going to say nothing, because there's a lot of things that really just gut me and make me so mad I can't, you know, but that's one of them.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of them, to disrespect. And I don't know, you know, I was born in 1965, obviously. I was an infant when the Vietnam, and toddler when the Vietnam War was going on. So I agree with you, something did change.
Oh, yeah.
You know, don't know, but I think it was just society became a little bit spoiled, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
After the things that the World War II veterans did for them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know.
But back to East Bernstadt, growing up there and everything. Let's look at it, for instance, the banking business, which I worked in for 14 years. But we had a little bank at East Bernstadt. It started out in 1898, the East Bernstadt Banking Company. And then it come and turned into the First National Bank of East Bernstadt.
The proprietors of that were who?
Well, the Blunchies,
okay.
The Castiles,
yes.
A whole bunch of those old Swissmen out there owned stock in it and everything.
Right.
And East Bernstadt began to go down a little bit. London began to grow. And a bank here in London in 1939 went broke. I believe it was a Farmers National Bank. I believe it went broke. And they started talking about moving the bank from East Bernstadt to London. And they was having trouble doing it. My grandfather went to your great-grandfather, the Blunchies.
Right.
They all owned stock in the bank.
Yeah.
And
Fred. Fred.
And he talked to them, and he said, you know, our bank, we've got a nice little bank, but we're not going to grow because our town is going down. London is going up. We need to move. Mm-hmm. And so they came in and they voted to move the bank to London. And we came up here and had to change our name from First National Bank to Second National Bank.
Okay.
Because the First National Bank of London went broke in 1914 and you couldn't use that name for so many years. Mm-hmm. Well, that little bank is now the Cumberland Valley National Bank, and it's one of the largest banks in the state of Kentucky.
That's an amazing piece of fact. That's an amazing fact, a historical fact.
I just got a call from the president the other day telling me that they had just passed $1 billion.
Wow. Yeah. So
and
that little bank grew from East Bernstadt.
Grew from that. That's right.
That's an amazing fact.
But that's the way East Bernstadt's gone down. London has come up.
And Pittsburgh was a hub then too.
Pittsburgh was a hub.
Booming, yes, it was a booming hub.
Star Coal Company and the Bond Foley Lumber Company.
Okay. Large employers
there.
Was
the two big thing. Actually, Bond Foley was their headquarters was Bond, Kentucky, over in Jackson County, but they hauled timber out of there into London.
Okay.
I mean, into East Bernstadt on the railroad and picked up the L&N there.
Right.
And then Star Coal Company had coal mines all over the area down there.
Right.
And then the coal worked out, and the timber worked out. And when that happens, we started down.
You're right. Well, in the job, you lose the jobs, and then people have to. So, but
I come out of service, and I went to work in the bank, worked 14 years, and got disillusioned with it. And went out and got me another job. Had to leave here, and I was gone 35 years, and come back because this is home.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I just don't feel right except being at home.
Right. Well, were you here in Laurel County during the times of the war and the Great Depression, though, during those years?
Well, of course, I was born in 26,
kind of
and I had what they call the Depression went through, and we had it rough. I can barely remember it, but my father was a postmaster when Roosevelt went in.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, back then, when the administration changed, all political jobs changed.
Yes.
And he got kicked out of the post office, and a Democrat went in.
Okay.
And so we had a little rough. I can remember being a little bit rough, but we had a roof over our head, and we had food to eat that we raised, and we got along fine.
Right.
But there was some people that really around East Bernstadt struggled hard.
Yeah.
I can remember it.
Uh-huh.
I can remember eating with, playing with kids and eating with their family and get home and my mother fussing at me for eating with them because she said, honey, they don't hardly have enough to feed their own people.
Wow.
And she would fuss at me for eating.
Yeah, that's a tough, that Great Depression was a tough, that was a tough deal.
I don't remember it wholeheartedly, but I can remember a little of it.
Right.
And it was rough on Laurel County. That I can remember.
And your mother having the foresight and the insight to say something like that to you.
Well,
she knew about those families.
Oh yeah, she knew the ones that were struggling. Now, if you had enough
and she
land,
had compassion for them.
Yeah, if you had enough land where you could raise plenty to eat, while you were okay.
Well, the WPA program though it helped put some folks back to work.
Oh yes,
and build some schools. And things like that.
Well, they built every school in Laurel County.
They did, yeah.
The gymnasium.
Most of them are torn down now, but we have the remnants of several of them. London is an example with the gym. At East Bernstadt, that's another example. That's a new school, but they wanted to keep something intact.
Yeah.
A lot of folks would like to have seen the school stay like it was.
Yeah.
But it was there was no way.
Well, you look at the old London High School here. They took that building and gutted it out and remodeled it. Got a beautiful building there.
It's beautiful. Yes.
But now they've stopped you from doing that. See, when East Bernstadt started to do the same thing, they wouldn't let them. Right. They had to tear the old building down and completely rebuild brand new.
Right. It's it has to do with the EPA and things like that.
But you look at the Hazel Green Gymnasium, the Bush Gym, and what used to be the Lily Gym. Mm-hmm. All of those were built WPA.
Yeah, and that got people back to work, got the economy going again and stuff like that. So even during those times, it was so political that your father lost his job.
Yes, that's amazing. That was politics.
Because it's certainly, that's one thing that hasn't changed very much.
Well, it's changed a little bit.
It's more polarizing now, and that's a shame.
Yeah.
The last two presidential elections, for example, have been very polarizing. I think that's hard on. I just think that's hard on your country.
Well, it is. It really
But there's nothing, you and I can't solve that.
Yeah.
But there's a greater divide, and that's a worrisome thing.
Yeah. I have one recollection of my childhood that I like to talk about, and that's when Mr. Roosevelt went in as president. One of the first things he did was close a whole bunch of post offices, little post offices all over the country. And my father being postmaster at East Bernstadt, which handled a lot of mail for that whole end of the county, the whole north end of the Laurel County, around and a little over into Jackson County. They had to close a whole bunch of those post offices. and I got to ride in an old covered wagon with an old gentleman by the name of Gabbard, who carried the mail to all those post offices. And I never will forget, my dad had to go with him because Dad had to close all those little post offices up.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know what all he had to do, but he had to go in and get, I don't know whether to get stuff from them or anything. I was too small to remember that. But we left East Bernstadt right at daylight. And we started down what we call the Bontown Road, which is Route 30. And went around on that thing, crossed creeks when they were pulling the 2 mules, and took a great big circle, come around and come down to the edge of Jackson County, and then hit down on below River Hill and come up there where 25 used to make a hard left turn right to what we call the top of River Hill.
Right, right.
And that's where we come back and hit the blacktop, was right there.
Wow.
And we got back to East Bernstadt after dark.
So it's an all-day thing in a covered wagon.
All day
covered
thing.
wagon.
I can never forget that.
Wow, what an experience!
I got to ride with him on that wagon and do all that.
Now the Gabbard man, you don't recall his first name?
No, I don't recall his name. I hate
Vernon
that I don't.
Gabbard married Ruth Williams.
Oh yes,
Ruthie.
Yeah.
And,
well, I married a Gabbard also.
okay, so so that's the reason I was curious about it.
Yeah.
Which Gabbard. But that's an amazing fact. And back then, let's talk about the Postal Service back then itself. A lot of the routes were on foot.
Oh yes,
And a lot of them were they still on horseback?
A lot of them on horseback. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of them were still on horseback. Yeah. Very few routes at that time in rural areas as these probably didn't use the motorized transportation as much.
Oh no, no. You get off. We would get in the car once in a while on the weekend and drive around, and there's many times we got stuck in creeks and had to go get guys to come with team of mules pull the whole car out.
Is that right?
Yeah, I can remember that many times.
Yeah. And that wasn't just here; that was everywhere. I mean,
I guess it was everywhere.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing to hear about those times.
Yeah.
You know, so tell us, RJ, about some of the changes that you've seen. You've already told us about some in your years in London and Laurel County. You know, you've seen. Well, let's go from point A to B to C to D right on. You know, because technology now is taking things over.
Oh yes.
Absolutely.
Well, of course, everything you traveled. If you went anywhere, you either went on a bus or a train, because there wasn't many cars and the roads weren't good to travel on or anything.
How long was a Lexington drive if you had to go see someone?
Well, Lawsy, I can't remember going to Lexington. We went to Louisville quite a bit because my mother was in the hospital in Louisville.
Okay.
And Louisville was almost a 4 hour, between a 3 and 4 hour drive to Louisville.
Okay.
But then up after I got up, in grade school, then we used to go to Lexington, but that was a 2 hour, 2.5 hours drive.
Okay.
Like that. But I do remember the train. We traveled on the train a lot. In fact, I got up, we'd get a quarter a week, was our allowance. And we would go Saturday morning, we would go down, a whole bunch of us, to the depot. And for a dime, we got a round trip ticket from East Bernstadt to London. And we could walk then from the depot uptown, and for a dime we got to go to the theater.
Okay.
And see a movie.
Yeah.
And then we had a nickel left, we could stop at the Begley drugstore.
Yeah.
And
had
buy us a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And go back, get on the train, and go back home.
Wow.
And that was just about every Saturday occurrence.
Wow. Yeah.
And there'd be 4, 5, or 6 of us together.
Yes. Yeah. I can remember in the 70s going to Begley Drug to Soda Fountain after school.
Oh yes,
You know, still in the 1970s. You know.
that was the gathering place.
Yeah. And then the Dyke Drug, of course, was
right across the street.
Right. Yeah. So there's been a lot of changes in Laurel County.
It was funny. A lot of people in London attended Dyke Drug. But most of the county people, for some reason, would go to Begley Drug.
Is that right?
I don't know why.
So some of tell us now, you said that's the Rita movie theater, right? Was that the Rita? Or
Yeah, Rita just moved in. Well, the Southland Theater was the first one, owned by O.J. Minix.
Okay.
And then Rita Theater moved into town.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what were some of the movies that you got to see?
Oh, Law, I can't remember. We watched a good Western every Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they would have what they call a serial, I believe it was called. On Saturday, they'd show part of it, and it'd always end in the
with a cliffhanger.
The main character being killed. But then the next Saturday, all of a sudden, he didn't get killed. He'd get out of the mess every time.
Yeah.
And you had to wait a whole week to find out what was going on.
But that kept you coming back.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it kept you coming back. So, yeah.
But and London had the two theaters. They had the Southland and the Rita both.
I've seen pictures, and I envision during those days, and I've had some other folks tell us, too, on weekends, London was a booming place.
Oh, yes.
Everybody came to town.
Yeah.
And then I've seen pictures where there were a lot of horses tied up.
Yeah.
And then there were also some cars. Yeah. But
Saturday,
they shared the road, right?
Saturday night, Saturday afternoon, we got cleaned up and we come to town. And I tell people this, and I don't think a lot of people believe it, but they would double park on both sides of Main Street. Cars would be double parked. The women would be sitting in cars talking. The men would be in one of the hotels playing cards.
Wow.
And we kids would be down in a field behind Begley Drug Store playing. And I tell people this, and the night policeman was Uncle Dan Miller. Everybody called him Uncle Dan. He was the night policeman. And at 9 o'clock, Uncle Dan would walk down on one corner or the other, either in behind Daniel's department store or in behind Begley Drug, one of the two. That was at each end of the block. And all he did was clear his throat. He'd go, and that was the signal for us to get to Main Street.
Right, for y'all.
And we'd all come back up, climb in the cars in 5 minutes.
You was gone.
We was gone. And no traffic. There was just no traffic through town at all at night.
Yeah. What about that?
There just wasn't any traffic whatsoever. But the ladies would talk and the men would play cards.
Yeah.
And we'd play hide and go seek and kick the can and stuff like that.
I don't think that would work these days. I don't think the ladies would let their guys go in there and play cards in the hotel. and
probably, I don't know. May not.
Okay, so let's paint a picture for our listeners for where Begley Drug Store, because I know where it was, but I want you to tell us, in proximity to Main Street now, because these things come to life as you're telling them. In my mind,
of course, the main.
You talk about you guys playing in a field behind.
Yeah, the main part of town, of course, is the courthouse.
Yes,
the county courthouse.
Right.
That's always been the main part.
Right.
it's set on the west side of Main Street. Main Street runs north and south, and it sets on the west side. The Begley Drug block was on the east side.
And that's where Cumberland Valley Bank is now.
Right,
That's where
Begley Drug was on one corner, and Daniel's department store was on the far corner. Now, in between them, there was a hotel. I can't remember whether it was the London or the Laurel. I believe it was the London Hotel. And then Neil Brock ran a little 5 and dime type store, jewelry and knickknacks and all that stuff. And then the bank building was there, which was a Farmers State Bank, but turned into Second National Bank.
Right.
And then there was there was a barber shop, I believe, and then Daniel's department store.
Okay.
That was the block that was the main part of town
All right.
You know. If you come north, you had the Hackney Brothers department store. You had another little sweet shop, we called it, drugstore type. You had a hardware store. I can't think of the name of it. A fellow by the name of Pointer ran it for a while. And then a little lady shop that a Jones lady ran.
Mm-hmm.
That was coming north. And then the start of the next block was what we call my mind don't work. I like to tell everybody my 18-year-old mind don't work too good. I can't think of the name of the little cafe that was there, and then Ford Garage.
Yes.
And then the theater.
Trot told us about that.
Was in that way.
So kids, believe it or not, back during those days, there wasn't a place where you could go get clothes and medicine and groceries at the same building.
No,
There were a lot more clothiers. Because of that. But that predates Walmart by a long time.
Oh yes, yeah. You went to the
drugstore
to get your drugs.
Yeah. Grocery store to get your groceries. And the
dry goods store to get your clothes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
So it was the hardware store. You went to
get
the
your hardware. Yeah.
It's all. No, it didn't have any of this conglomeration. I call it. Whatsoever.
Yeah.
But London has grown. We've had few service stations on Main Street. Mm-hmm. Now they're all closed and gone.
Yeah, I can remember. Kids these days don't even realize what a full service gasoline station was.
No.
They don't. They can't even. They don't know what that is.
No, if a lady doesn't know how to put gas in a car, she has a hard time getting gas anymore.
And back then, you just pulled up, said fill her up, or give me $5 or whatever.
Yeah,
$5 went a lot farther back when gas was
clean your windshield.
When it was 78, I think I got my driver's license. Gas was less than $1 a gallon.
Oh yeah,
at that time.
5 gallons for $1.
Come on, I've seen it rise to these levels in my time. I'm 53, so I got my license in '81. So that was in the early '80s. Gas was under $1 a gallon.
The cheapest gas I ever saw was, of course, 20 cents a gallon, 5 gallons for $1.
Yeah, see, I've not seen that.
Now, somebody on Facebook the other day, I call it Spacebook.
That's a good name for
it. They said 12 cents a gallon. I never saw it that cheap.
Yeah.
But it was now. I know when it was rationed, the war was going on. One of the Mooster boys, another one that's kin to you, a Swiss group, they had a gas pump because they had a pretty good sized farm, and they was one of the few people in town that had some equipment that run with gas.
Right.
And he kept one pump.
Yeah.
And I never will forget, Emmett was the one I ran around with a lot, and he would go tell his daddy. He said, "Can we drain the hose?" And it had the big glass tank at the top, and you could pull a lever and drain all that gas out of that glass
and
cylinder.
get a right smart amount
back down in there, but it left about a gallon in the hose, in the length of the hose,
which would go a long way.
And you could take that and stick it in your tank, drain it out.
Drain the hose.
Of course, gas was rationed, and you couldn't. You couldn't.
Everything was. Yeah.
And get by with that. That way, we'd get a little extra.
Get a little extra.
We could drive once in a while.
Thinking ahead. Yeah,
We
that's
didn't
good.
get to drive much.
Right.
Get to drive a little bit.
Yeah, that's good. That's
forth.
good. Well, it's time to wrap up. But you, sir, are known far and wide as a purveyor of Laurel County and London history, and I want to thank you again for indulging us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it very much.
Okay, thank you, sir.